Welcome to Integrity Inspire, your daily dose of inspiration and motivation, featuring the bright and talented members of the Integrity Marketing Group family. Now, here's your host, Integrity co-founder and CEO, Bryan W. Adams.
Hello, everybody, and thanks so much for joining today's Inspire podcast. One of the things that we've really created this podcast to do is to inspire others and really think about ways that we can kind of rise above and serve more people together as the Integrity platform. And I wanted to share something that I'm incredibly passionate about, and it's something that I want to make sure that we're leveraging across the entire platform so that we can better serve Americans with their life, health, and wealth planning needs. Now, I've been passionate about legacy planning since I was a little kid. And I know that sounds kind of strange. I grew up in a small town in West Texas. My parents owned funeral homes, and many of you have heard me tell some of those stories. And if you can imagine the Adams family jokes that I've gotten since our family funeral homes were called Adams Funeral Homes, I've heard them all. So for me, you just got to kind of own some of that. But growing up, I was the kid that everybody wanted to go to your dad's office and see the funeral home. And it was always something I was interested in a lot of ways. And my sister and I worked at our family funeral home. I remember when I was 12 years old, I turned 12. My dad said, now it's time to go to work. And from 12 on, and even before that, we would put on a little suit and I would open the door and say, welcome to Adams Funeral Home. And we would wash cars and mow lawns and everything that you would need to do around a funeral home. And for me, it was amazing to see how people would come into the funeral home and just the surprise that we found, that people would be like, I can't believe this happened today. And I was at an early age thinking about legacy planning, about people planning ahead, but also about how are you remembered after you're gone. I spent a lot of time walking through cemeteries and working around cemeteries as part of that, and looking at headstones. And you can think about cemeteries you've gone around, and you think about like, man, who was that person? What was their life about? What was their legacy about? Because that person was the most important person to many people in their lives. And now they're just words on a piece of granite. And it was something that I thought about a lot. Now, it's something I want to talk a little bit about today, and really why I'm so passionate about legacy planning. Now, I waited a little later in life to get married. I started our business, started Integrity, and I was all in, man. It was all about focusing on how do you grow a business. And frankly, I was starving because it was so hard in those early days of borrowing money and just trying to survive to make it to the next opportunity that we had. And so finally, when I decided to get married, I wanted to make sure that my engagement was an exciting one. In fact, all my friends have been married. Most of them had kids by the time I got engaged. And I noticed that there were two things in every engagement story that somebody would say. And think about this. And if you tell your engagement story whenever you were getting engaged, or if you think about your kids or something like that, there's two things that people ask. It's how did he do it? And let me see the ring. So for me, I decided that I wanted to do something a little different than all my friends hadn't done. And so I've got my pilot's license, and I decided to rent a plane. I don't own a plane. Decided to rent a plane and go take Robin flying around. And then we landed at this amazing grass runway in front of a lake. It's called Lake Texoma. And before that, I'd had Stephen Prince, who was working with us and it still is, had him flown up, and he set up this amazing picnic, set up cameras and set up everything. So we land, Robin and I do, everything's all set up. We get out and I proposed. She said yes. That's the most important part, because I hadn't thought this through that well, because if she had said no, I'm not sure how she would have made it home. But Stephen and I would have gotten home after that. But thank God she said yes. And then we got back in the plane and we flew to a little airstrip out by Plano, Texas, which is right a suburb of Dallas. And it's this little airstrip, it's a short runway in the middle of a neighborhood. And the reason we picked that is because it's 2 blocks from Robin's parents' house. And the idea was I would land and we would have all our friends and family there. So we had all of our friends and family, grandparents, parents, everybody there, friends. And the idea was we would land, we'd get out. Nobody would have to ask, how did he do it? They would see how he did it, and then she could show the ring. In fact, here's a quick picture of us in those early days, man. It's hard to believe I was that thin and I had that much hair. And I think I married a vampire because Robin hasn't changed any, but look how much I've changed. But it was something, this was taken by Stephen at Lake Texoma right after I proposed. And it was just an incredible experience. And so the idea was we would get back in the plane, go to Plano, get out. And I just had this envision in my head about being perfect. And it really was. We came in, and if you're flying, especially in a small plane, sometimes it's hard to realize where you are. You're flying and you're just kind of looking, everything kind of looks the same. And as we come down in this little runway, it's on one end of the runway is a shopping mall, a big shopping mall. And you have to come in, go over that, come over this major 6-lane road called Park, and you have to essentially kind of buzz the cars because right on the other side of that road is a fence and then the runway, and you have to hit that runway and roll out. And then on the other side is a 2-story brick building. So I'd practiced this before, I'd flown in there before. And so we come in, we go over the shopping mall, we come over the big road. Robin gets excited because now she knows where we are. We've got 30 or so of our friends and family standing off on the side with flowers and excited to see us. We come in and she gets excited. I get excited. By the way, that's not a good thing to have your pilot excited as he's trying to land. And I come in and I made, let me tell you, a perfect landing. It was smooth. In fact, one of our best friends is taking a video and she goes, oh my gosh, that was a perfect landing, turns off the camera. But what happened was I landed a little too deep in the runway. Now, a short runway like this, you need all of it. And so I landed kind of midfield. I should have landed where the numbers are, if you are thinking about an airport. Should have landed where the numbers are, so I've got all this time to roll out. And this is a short, tiny runway. So I land, have a smooth landing, and then we're going, I'm like, oh my gosh, we're not stopping. So think about like you're seeing like the end of the runway coming and there's this 2-story brick building and I'm like, oh my gosh, we're not going. And so what you do in that situation is you try not to freak out. You go around, and it's called to go around. According to the FAA, I'd done this 173 times. I practiced it as part of this. So I'd had experience going around, touch and go. So I try to get back up in the air. But what happened is it was a perfectly still day. It was a beautiful day. February 9th, 2008, and smooth, perfect day. I'm trying to I'm seeing the end of the runway come, and then I'm trying to go around. I'm giving it all she's got. I'm pulling up on the throttle, pulling up on everything. And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's this 2-story brick building. I finally get off the ground. I'm coming in flying. You need headwind, so it kind of helps pop you up. And we didn't have any of that. So I'm going. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to hit that 2-story brick building. And so what I did is I just went to the left. I veered to the left. What I didn't do is look and see that there was a row of trees right there. And I turned and immediately was like, oh my God. And there's these trees. And I knew immediately we were about to hit them. And so I'm still trying to climb, do everything I could. And all of a sudden we hit one, rips the left wing off mostly, hit another one, rips most of the right wing off. I just kill the throttle and we go down and we landed in the middle of this road, big 6-lane highway called International Parkway in Dallas. And we skid up and we hit another tree that we came to a stop. And think about this. All of your friends, all your family are watching this. My mom and dad, everybody. It was incredibly scary. I check on everybody. We're all okay. And by the grace of God, there's not a bump, not a scratch, not a bruise, nothing that happened to us. And so we get out, we run away from the plane. Stephen and I, as a side note, Stephen and I are almost chest bumping like, oh my God, we just survived a plane crash. Can you believe that? Everybody's all right. Well, then our family comes down and people are freaked out. My mom's crying. My dad owns funeral homes, so my dad's thinking he's about to pick, pieces up from us. I mean, they saw everything. They were freaked out, which kind of sombered the mood for us. This lady pulls up and we're like running away from the plane. This lady yells out, "Hey, y'all's blocking the road." And we're like, Robin literally goes, "Excuse me, let me move the plane we just crashed." It was a crazy event. There were helicopters, 3 news helicopters, every news channel, Telemundo showed up, everybody showed up. I was front page of the Dallas Morning News, and I'll never forget 2 things. My father-in-law coming down and him looking at Robin like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And then looking at me like, "You son of a you know what?" And my father-in-law still can't talk about this story. Second thing I remember was my mom standing there. I'm thinking, we are blessed beyond measure. Like, we are like not a scratch. Like, this is going to make a great story. And my mom looking at me and saying, "I don't know if you'll have to pay for this the rest of your life, but I'm just so glad you're still alive." And I was like, first of all, like, oh my God, like I could have died, right? Which, thank God that we didn't. Second of all, I was like, "What are you talking about? Pay for this the rest of my life?" It's one of those moments I was like crazy. In fact, if you look at the plane that went down, that 2-story brick building was a Ferrari Maserati dealership. Thank God we didn't hit that. You can see the wheel is like turned up. It's supposed to be down, and you can see the wings are all mangled and torn up. The firemen rushed in with gear on and everything and saved Robin's roses I gave her. I was like, "Can you get some more stuff out of there?" But you can just see it was amazing to think about some of the things that we had gone through. The guy who I rented the plane wanted a new plane, and man, it was just a crazy time after that. And I was scared about, what does this mean? Am I going to get sued? What do I need to do? And I was a member of an association named AOPA. It's a Pilot Owners Association that had a membership benefit that if you need help, they'd give you free legal assistance. And so I called that group and said, "Hey, I just crashed a plane. I don't know what, I should do. Can you please help me find an attorney?" Because I'd called my personal attorney, who's a good friend of mine. I said, "What do I do?" And he goes, "I don't know. Just don't say a word." So if Robin gives me a hard time about this all the time. If we would have said something, if this would have been in the news that we were getting engaged, we'd probably ended up on Oprah Winfrey or something for this. But we didn't say anything. And so I called the association and they said, "No problem. We're going to give you a list of attorneys in Dallas that can help you." And I picked the first one. And man, I wasn't greedy. I was just like, "I'll take that guy." And he handled everything. He handled the insurance claims. He handled negotiating with the plane owner. He handled the airport, tried to come back to us and say we tore up a bunch of stuff, which we didn't. And so he handled all of that. And I remember talking to him one day. His name's Kevin. And I said, "Kevin, you spent a lot of time on this. How much do I owe you?" And he said, "You don't owe me a dime. This is part of our member benefits." He said, "As a pilot, I believe that this is my way of giving back." He said, "The only thing that I ask is that you find a way to give back as well." And I remember exactly where I was sitting. This guy who was a pilot and an attorney was using his God-given talents to help serve others. And he said, he just gave me this challenge. "The only thing I want you to repay me with is find a way to give back as well." And I remember I was sitting where we were working out of my house, and I got out of what's now my son's bedroom. I walk out of where my office was and go into Stephen's office. I was like, I have to figure out a way to give back in this. And so we created a service called Legacy Safeguard. And I can tell you, after, we figured out like the seriousness of what we had been involved with, and as my mom kind of woke me up to this reality that I could have died that day, I was worried about like, how would people remember me? What would my legacy be like? Had I planned ahead and had I told some of my stories that my parents and family could have continued on with? Like, would I be one of those names on a headstone? Or worse yet, what would that have happened if something had happened to Robin or Stephen, who were in the plane with me? And so, because of my passion about Legacy Safeguard, we set out to create a member service that we wanted to help other people plan for their legacy and help them be remembered long after they're gone. And so what Legacy Safeguard is, and we created this in 2008, so we've been using this incredible system for over 16 years, is it's a member benefit that helps people leave a lasting legacy. We have incredible legacy planning benefits. We have a legacy planning guide software. We have a legacy planning archive where people can record all their information and then their families can access that at the time of need. We have an incredible estate planning support side where we can help people find estate planning attorneys, make sure that they have their wills and trust and everything set up so that if something happens to them, or I should say when something happens to them, that their family's taken care of, their estate's taken care of. We have end-of-life planning guidance and assistance. Because of my background of growing up in the funeral home, we're uniquely positioned to help people plan for that day, to make sure that people have a great ceremony that can help celebrate their life. And we provide ways we can help families find a funeral home. We can help even guide them through their entire planning process. And we have people on call around the clock that can help them plan for that. And then even support for survivors. When somebody loses a loved one, filing a death claim with an insurance company can be incredibly complex. And all the other difficult things that you go through, that you need people that can help support you, even with grief counseling resources. And so we decided to put together a turnkey system to help not only clients and members plan and leave a lasting legacy, but we also helped create an incredible sales system for our agents and advisors to go in and talk to their clients about leaving a lasting legacy. And what this does is it changes the entire presentation. It changes the entire environment. So if you're walking into a family's home and you're wanting to talk about life insurance, if you go in there talking about death and dying, that's not very inspirational. The name of this podcast is Inspire for a reason. Man, that's not very inspirational. In fact, most people kind of clam up, get defensive. I'm not going to die, whatever that is. But if I go in and I talk to somebody and say, hey, tell me about your family. Let's walk through and tell me about the one person that if you could spend just one more day with, even one more hour with, who would that be? Think about that for yourself. Who's that one person in your life that if you had just one more day to just sit with them and talk to them about life, ask them questions, ask them different things about their background, who would that be? For me, it would be my pawpaw. I think a lot of us would have grandparents on this list. My granddad was one of the most inspirational people, one of the most amazing people I've ever met. I never saw him upset. He was never cared about money. He was a mechanic. And if he got a chance to go fishing, he would close down the shop and he would go fishing. And it didn't matter if your car was there or not. In fact, at his funeral, I was asked to speak at his funeral, and I was asking some of his friends, tell me some of your stories about him. And one of his friends said, Check one time came up. I took my car in there, and this was in the 60s, and we only had one car. And he had got a chance to go fishing down on the coast, and he locked up his shop and went fishing for 2 weeks and just wasn't worried at all about the clients because he was just that type of guy. I mean, he was just such a fun guy, man. And if I could have one more day just to sit down with him and ask him, what do you think of, like, if I could show him what we're building here at Integrity, if I could let my kids meet him, my boys never met him, if I could ask him, are you proud of me? Think about the impact that you could have with meeting with somebody like that one more day. And I think we all have those people. And you're going to be that person to someone else as well. I remember at his funeral, everybody called him Czech. His name was Chester. Everybody called him Czech. And that was the only name anybody called him other than Papa. And I remember asking his friends, why did he have this nickname named Czech? And not one of his friends knew it. In fact, I asked, he's got 4 daughters, including my mom. I said, why did people call Papa Czech? And not one of them know that. In fact, this Christmas, we were back at home, and I asked them all again, did anybody ever find out my Papa's name was Czech? And not one person still to this day knows why he had that nickname. there's got to be a great story behind that. And so part of what we do is in Legacy Safeguard, you can go in and write all that important information about yourself. In our legacy planning software, it's a proprietary software that you can use on your phone. You can download it through Apple and other sites. And you can go in and complete information about your life, your family history, about your childhood memories, about your nicknames. Another example of that is amazing how quickly people become a faceless name on a family tree. In fact, I'm just going to go through this with you. If you think about it, most people cannot name all of their great-grandparents. So if you think about this, who are your great-grandparents, right? And you start thinking like, I never personally met any of my great-grandparents. And we had 8 great-grandparents. So you have 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents. And it's amazing in one generation how you can just be completely forgotten. In fact, for me, my dad's dad died before I was born. And he went by this nickname RH. Everybody called him RH. So every time, all growing up, I heard about RH Adams. And I was embarrassed because I never knew my dad's real name. Think about that. My own granddad, I didn't even know his real name and why people called him RH. And it took me years to get the confidence to ask my dad, tell me about your dad, because we just never talked about him. So, I mean, you think about how quickly people become a faceless name on a family tree. And so one of the things that Legacy Safeguard does is we provide an incredible turnkey sales system for agents to go in and talk to their clients about leaving a lasting legacy. The thought provocation that we just had about thinking about your family. Start talking about those stories. Go into a home and in a warm-up, instead of just talking about, I'm going to talk to you about buying life insurance, which nobody wants to talk about. You talk about leaving a legacy. I see you've got these photos on your wall. Tell me about these grandkids. What are they into? How old are they now? Oh, where do they go to college? People love talking about their kids and their grandkids, especially their grandkids. Tell me about your pets. People love talking about your pets. What's going to happen to your pets when something happens to you? We've even taken into consideration all of that so that people can make sure that they leave those instructions so that when that day comes, and it's going to come for all of us, that you've got those instructions in mind. And then when that day comes, that your family has somebody to call that will help guide you through that entire process. It will help you find a funeral home, will help you understand what this means when you're going through that, because planning for a funeral is not something that most people do very often. And if you think about it, especially the clientele that we serve, if you're over 65, which are our Medicare clients, what is the chance that they've planned for a funeral? Let's just do the math. Let's say that their parents were 30 years old when they had that your client as a kid. Well, that would make, if you said they're 65 today, that would make their parents 95 years old. Average life expectancy in the U.S. is 79. So the chances are that they've already planned for a parent planning for a funeral. And a lot of times they've maybe planned for a spouse or even a child. And so these are real emotions that you can talk about. There's a reason we want to help leave a lasting legacy. We want to make sure you have a service to help you be remembered, but also to have a service there that's on call to help you find a funeral home, help you navigate those waters, and even support your survivors in filing the death claim and any other things that they need assistance with throughout that process. And for agents, we've got a turnkey sales and marketing system that helps them go through and helps clients with this plan. In fact, for Medicare, this is post-season. AEP season just ended. And in 2013, I wrote this book called Post-Season Game Plan to help Medicare agents advance into the playoffs and to also marketing life insurance. In fact, since this is the 10-year anniversary, we decided to update this book. In fact, Steve Young is writing a forward for us, and we're going to be able to have this. And this is just a simple guide to help agents understand, using my story and some of my background, to help them understand how they can go back and talk to their clients. And now that you've become a client, as I've helped you with your Medicare, let me also help you with some other things. And one of the things I want to do is give you an incredible service free of charge called Legacy Safeguard so that you can be remembered long after you're gone. Now, this is an incredible turnkey system that will help Medicare agents, but also life insurance agents. And we've done it all with our technology so that you can enroll somebody online. They can use the software that we've created. They can print that off and make sure that they have access to that when that time comes. Now, I've mentioned this just on some podcasts, that the reason that I want to bring this back up is because my mom and dad both recently were in the hospital. My mom had some health issues. She was in the hospital over Thanksgiving for 3 days. She's doing great. My dad, right after that, the day after she got out of the hospital, my dad goes in the hospital, and he was in there for a couple of weeks, and he was going through some really challenging stuff, and we figured it out, and by the grace of God, he's doing well now. But over Christmas, we went back home, and it's a 5-hour drive. Typically, my parents they now live in the Dallas area, but we still have a place back home, and they would drive that 5 hours, go spend Christmas, hang out for a week or two, and then we would come in for a few days, open presents, come back home. But because of all of this, they couldn't do that this year, and so I rented an RV, and I didn't realize I'd never driven an RV before. I would like to say the RV drove me. I'm not sure I drove it. It was, listen, man, that was the last time I will ever do that, but it was so much fun for my kids and my mom and my wife to sit back in the back, play card games, hang out, take a nap while I'm sitting up front driving my dad. And my dad and I had over 5 hours each way, so 10 hours of time to talk about his childhood, to talk about his background. And it was interesting. I was sitting in the hospital a few weeks prior to that with him, and I was sitting on the edge of the hospital bed, and it was a couple of things. One, I'm so thankful we live in a country that we have such world-class medicine and healthcare. It's amazing. We should never take that for granted. Second, I'm so thankful for what we do here at Integrity, because they're a client of ours, and they had a Medicare plan with us. And thank God that Medicare plan provided the world-class health care that they needed and got him the help that he needed, and he's doing great because of it. And then I was sitting there thinking about the good days ahead. We talk about the good days ahead a lot. I was thinking about the good days ahead, and I was thinking about getting out of the hospital. What are we going to do? How are we going to get mom and dad back home for Christmas? Because my mom really wanted the tradition. We needed the tradition in our family to do that. But then I started thinking about what happens if something happens to my dad. It's one of the first times I'd ever thought about that, frankly, Dad was sick. Like, what happens if something happens to him? Some of you have had to plan for that. And I was sitting there thinking, like, this is a man who spent over 50 years planning people's funerals, helping people in some of the toughest times in their lives. And I didn't even know what he wanted for his funeral. Now think about that for a minute. It was incredible. So as Dad and I were driving, I started talking to him about his childhood, talking about all these things that I know I want to know. And one day, one of my kids may be thinking about him just like I think about my papa, about if I had that one more day with them. Like, we need to write these stories down. Tell me about your childhood. Tell me about what it was like growing up on a farm, being really poor, and wanting to become a funeral director when you were 6. That's just weird, frankly. But that was his story, man. He wanted to do that. And it was because of a guy named George Price that was really nice to him, who was a funeral director, who dressed really nice and drove nice cars. And he said, you can do anything in this world. And it gave my dad hope that he could get off the farm. And I never heard that story until my dad's telling it as we're driving this RV back to West Texas. And I asked Dad, even like, where do you want to be buried at? These are questions that I had never thought about. And we do this every day. And so I was really convicted as we came back from the holidays of, we have an incredible service that we can help people plan their legacy and help them be remembered long after they're gone. We have an incredible plan for all these clients that we just helped today. We should go back and give them this incredible service called Legacy Safeguard, and we should give it to them free of charge. Now, previously, we had partnered with insurance companies that you had to buy a policy from that insurance company to get access to this. But what we're committed to is helping serve clients and help them in every aspect of their life. And so at Integrity, we've decided to now provide Legacy Safeguard membership benefits to every one of our clients, regardless if they buy a policy from us or not. And we're going to provide it to every one of our agents that can go out and present this to their clients and meet with their clients about this important need and provide it to them for free as well. Now, an agent has to be appointed with one of our integrity companies. It has to be this part of being an invaluable partner that we want to be, that you have to be an integrity partner. You have to work with some of our insurance companies. But this opens up the opportunity. Now, I say this all the time. We don't have a sales problem. The sales always happen. We sell a lot of products. But we do sometimes have a presentation product. So how do you get in front of more people? Well, Legacy Safeguard's an incredible way of helping people go in, talk about some of these things, and help them talk about leaving a lasting legacy. And then we have these transition statements that help agents transition into a product sell. And so part of that is you're helping somebody understand their legacy need and talk about legacy planning, talk about some of the stories we just talked about. And we're going to have a lot more training about this. And really how you go through is, as one of my clients, I want to give you this incredible membership benefit called Legacy Safeguard free of charge, just for being one of my clients, because I believe it's so important to leave a lasting legacy and be remembered after you're gone. And part of leaving a lasting legacy, so we've got these transition statements that say part of leaving a lasting legacy is also taking care of your family when you're not here. And we've got some of the most incredible life insurance products that help provide for your family after you're gone. And let me tell you about those. So it transitions immediately and smoothly into a life insurance sell. And that's regardless if it's final expense, if it's traditional life, it's a UL policy. It's a smooth transition that sets that up to help them. You've already got them thinking about leaving a legacy. Now let's talk about really taking care of your legacy as part of that. And then we've created this one-of-a-kind referral system that is unbelievable. And part of it is as you complete that sell, you say, now part of leaving a lasting legacy is also helping others leave one too. And I really believe that there's a power of passing it on and giving it away to other people. And we want other people to have this incredible opportunity to have membership benefits from Legacy Safeguard. And as now a new member of Legacy Safeguard, you get an opportunity to sponsor up to 6 other people into Legacy Safeguard free of charge. They get all the same benefits that you have: the legacy planning services, the end-of-life planning guidance and assistance, the support for survivors, the estate planning support that we provide. They get all of that, and it's really part of you helping other people leave a lasting legacy. So who would you like to sponsor today to also get these benefits? Now, one of the number one questions we get is, why can I only sponsor 6 people? It's an amazing question. If you get that question, listen, if they want to sponsor 12, let them sponsor 12. But we want people to sponsor as many people into Legacy Safeguard as possible, because that then becomes a referral. And so then you go to the door, you get somebody who's sponsored, and you walk up the door and you say, "Hi, I'm Bryan Adams. I'm here with Integrity," or whoever the company name is. And I was just recently working with your friend Joan. And Joan became a member of Legacy Safeguard. So it's an incredible member benefit that allows people to leave a lasting legacy and be remembered long after they're gone. And part of leaving a lasting legacy is also helping others leave one too. And she had the opportunity to sponsor 6 people, the most important people in her life. And she chose you as one of those people. You must mean a lot to Joan. Tell me about your relationship. And then you go straight into, let me talk about leaving a lasting legacy with you. This referral system has proven to be one of the most powerful parts of the Legacy Safeguard system to make sure that people can leave a lasting legacy. And I've outlined all of this in our book called Postseason Game Plan. And we've got a lot of legacy planning training. We've got a lot of sales training on this. But what this does is allows our agents to make more presentations. And as a byproduct of that, they will sell more products, because that's part of leaving a lasting legacy. And so as I went through this incredible experience with, setting up Legacy Safeguard so many years ago, and many of you have, had so much success with it. But as I've also experienced it firsthand recently, I was convicted to say, let's do this even more, and let's give this out to more members so that they can leave a lasting legacy. And so I'm super excited to announce our 10-year anniversary edition of Postseason Game Plan. It tells a lot of my story and then sets up a lot of what we've just been talking about. And with our Medicare Center technology, now clients can send out letters directly to their clients to say, or emails directly to their clients and say, as part of being a client of mine, I want to check in, make sure that everything's going well. And I want to provide you with an incredible free membership in Legacy Safeguard, something I believe really important, and set up that appointment so they can go in, enroll them into Legacy Safeguard, and then start a conversation about life insurance, start a conversation about wealth planning, start a conversation about other health insurance products. It starts the conversation in so many different ways. And that's really what all of us need to do, is be able to sit down and start a conversation about these important things. And there's no telling where it leads from there. And I can tell you personally, I'm so relieved now that as I've had that conversation with my dad, as I think about leaving that story for my family, because one day you're going to be that person that somebody says, I would give anything if I could spend just one more day with. And if we can help other people plan for that and then help generations, there's no telling where we go from here. So we're going to be announcing Postseason Game Plan right away. We're also going to be really talking a lot about Legacy Safeguard, and we want to be able to help agents be even more successful in helping people leave a lasting legacy and be remembered long after they're gone. Thanks so much for all that you do. This is another example of how powerful the Integrity Network is to serve other people in such powerful ways. And I can't wait to help other people leave a lasting legacy with you into the future. God bless you. Take care.